So hopefully this will go better than the live stream did. Obviously, I was having problems, so I'm going to film this and upload it because what I have to say this morning is pretty important. If you don't know who I am, I'm Suzanne Titkemeyer. I used to write for Pathos, a column called No Longer Quivering about the Quiverful movement. I wrote the column for and edited it for over 10 years and featured other writers all about the evangelical, non-denominational, high-demand religious organizations, the taco churches, are totalitarian, authoritative church organizations. And that's kind of what I want to talk about today. But let me preface this by saying don't bully anybody I'm going to talk about at all. If you have something nasty to say about them, don't go fling it at them. We are strong and powerful women. We don't do that. We don't take things real life. So, the other day for Taco Tuesday, I spoke about the Stronger Men Conference and um, Mark Driscoll's response to the opening act. I hesitate to call it act because it wasn't an act. It was a stunt of sheer bravery and weirdness, which I have to get to in a minute again. First, let me say this is how I dress when we have family or friends here and I'm taking them to the beach. I don't let them see the old, torn up, comfortable beach clothing I wear. Just like Barbie, I wear things with sequins and little sparklies and color coordinated. I wear my hat, but this is not me. But I am talking today about how these guys are very much like Ken from the Barbie movie. Now, let me say that this is not my own original concept. I came up with this after I was tooling around the internet looking at the coverage of these crazy guys, looking at a piece written by on Baptist News Global by Rick Pidcock. Okay. He wrote a piece called When Mark Driscoll and Josh Howerton Showed Up at the Stronger Men's Conference This Weekend. Now, those of you that saw Tuesday and saw the thing I did on that, and I was laughing about Mark Driscoll being so incredibly triggered that he went into this rant, and John Lindell, the pastor leading the thing, kicked him off the stage and kicked him out of just kicked his butt on, what out. So that was interesting and it was unexpected. And all day, Monday and Tuesday, I was laughing over this stuff because there's nothing funnier than when these evangelical men fight. These taco type church guys start squabbling with each other. It reminds me of this Barbie movie, just like this guy was saying, Rick Pidcock. Why? Because there is useless competitiveness between these guys, number one, which we saw performative outrage that they were doing. The other thing that is just utterly obvious to anybody but them is they have zero self-awareness. They don't understand that the stronger men that they're pushing in this conference are actually the weaker man. They're the shiny, pretending to be masculine guy who may not be so masculine after all. All alike, just like Ken's. Beta man versus beta man. And just like the Ken fight in the end of the Barbie movie, where um oh, can't think of the guy's name. Ryan Gosling saying, I'm just Ken, the power ballad of the whole movie, where it was a Ken against Ken and they're having this crazy battle and you're looking at it laughing because they don't have real weapons and they're acting just over the top ridiculous. And you're going, oh, that's those guys. No wonder Rick Pidcock called them out for being all Kens because they are kind of all Kens in their own weird way. And Tuesday, when I had done this, I had not seen this piece, nor had I seen the video of the James River Church had put together for the Strong Men Conference of 2025. That was when, for me, the whole fun began. And instead of me just laughing at the behavior of Mark Driscoll, I started laughing at all of them. They're all kids. They're all beta guys fighting with each other and pretending that this stuff is masculinity. They had monster trucks, just like it was the Righteous Gemstones. They had boxers, manly men. At least they didn't have UFC, because sometimes when my husband watches UFC, I say, the only difference between UFC and prawn of the most happy variety, let's just put it that way, is those guys are wearing shorts. There's no lube in the ring. I've said that a number of times to him. So they were doing all that ridiculous stuff. They had all kinds of fire and fury and stupidity. I just could not believe it. It was like I was watching a Righteous Gemstones episode on steroids, and I could not get over it. I had to go back and rewatch some of the Righteous Gemstones to try to figure out where the overlap was, and I'm still not there yet. They're all alike, and they're all not manly. They're all fake plastic, like Ken. Ryan Gosling said he almost didn't take the role in the movie Barbie until he saw his daughters disrespecting Ken in the yard. They just threw Ken aside. I believe I heard that, but I don't remember if that was the entire story or not. But once he realized how utterly useless Ken was in the Barbie world, I think he was intrigued to take the role at that point, because it is all about Barbie in Barbie world, and then when you're playing with Barbies as a little girl. These guys all think their job is beach. Like Ken in the movie thought his job was just beach. If you haven't seen the movie, I encourage you to watch it, because it's interesting, because it follows the matriarchy that is Barbie Land, that spins into patriarchy once Ken goes to the real world and brings Jordan Peterson's demented ravings back. And it doesn't go well. Let's just put it that way, as either patriarchy or matriarchy, even though I will say that while the guys who are the Kens are doing beach as their job, what kind of job is beach? Beach is a place you go to. The women were running everything, including the Supreme Court and the presidency in Barbie Land. And it didn't work out super well for both of them. And at the end, Barbie comes to the only reasonable conclusion that they do not need to replace the patriarchy with the matriarchy. They need to do some form of equality between the Barbies and the Kens, as it should be. We're all humans. We're all very similar, depending upon even with whether you have an innie or an outies or gonads. It doesn't stop this, the brain. There's no difference in brain. There's some bodily differences. And that's really it. That's really all it is. So I was interested to read this article where Rick Pidcock was comparing the behavior of Josh Howerton with the behavior with Mark Driscoll, Mr. Penis Holmes. Now, I have not been extremely familiar with Josh Howerton, but apparently he's the head pastor of Lake Point Church near Dallas. They have 6 different campuses, and they're going everywhere, a mega church, Mars Hill wannabe style, trying to recreate the thing that Mark Driscoll did and ran into the ground. What I find very interesting about Josh Howerton are all the accusations Plagiarism. Why? Well, you know me, I'm a writer. I think plagiarists are the scummiest of the scum. I've always thought that. I've said it. I said that about a former colleague of mine that has plagiarized a lot of my content. Every time I have to talk about plagiarism, I get very annoyed. So here we are, plagiarizing. So he's plagiarized a bunch of things at one of his sermons. He supposedly plagiarized, is alleged to have plagiarized a apology. And what was the apology issued for? For making a joke way worse even than the Matchbox 20 song that was used in the Barbie movie when the Kens were all in charge of patriarchy. They sang a song called Push and played guitars and sang this to the Barbies. And Push is a pretty terrible song that just really promotes the idea of violence against women, basically. So apparently, Howerton has said so many awful sexist quote jokes about women, and I have something to say about guys and jokes in a minute, that it has spawned articles like this one titled, Why Josh Howerton Makes Me Ashamed to Be Complementarian. That was written by a woman. Um, Jokes, when a man tells you something truly awful and you react like, what? With your honest opinion. Just like I'm giving honest opinions and my thoughts today. These are just my opinions. When you give them your opinion that this is awful or passive aggressive or whatever you want to call it, and they come back with the, oh, but I was just joking. I was just kidding. You have no sense of humor. BS. That is a type of just running away, back away from all this stuff and trying to minimize the actual awfulness of what they're saying. Trying just joking and move away. It's not. Howerton gave a sermon where he made a wedding night. My husband is over there saying a lot of silly things. He's half asleep. He's been taking a nap, so I think he's probably telling me off in his sleep. Jim, are you okay? Okay, so he told a wedding night joke about a woman and said you should stand where your husband wants you to stand, do what your husband wants you to do, and a few other silly things. Jesus wept. How is this any different than John Piper saying that women are all sinning when you give directions to some man who's lost and ask you for directions? Turn right at the road where the horse died 3 years ago. That's how those directions would go here, but differently there. Um, so that's not a sin. It's not a sin. Jim, Jim, I've got to wake him up. He's making lots of weird noises. Hey, Jim, 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 you're having a nightmare. You're saying all kinds of things. Oh. Okay, so back. Even ridiculous pastor who writes the world's worst novels, Doug Wilson, signed in on this. He locked into the fray and mocked them all. Now, this is a guy that thinks that you inject marijuana with a needle. I don't think I would believe anything coming out of his mouth if what I read in his book, Ride Sally Ride, is what he genuinely believes. I would totally just ignore him. So the Bible News Global talks about complementarianism that is safe, healthy, and sustainable for all. I'd like to see that animal because I never have. I've only seen complementarianism that is limiting, that is very toxic, that harms women. Eventually, you're going to have nervous breakdown and not be able to function. Don't believe me? Read Shannon Harris's book, The Woman They Wanted. She sums up the whole of evangelical woman experience in a way that um, felt really real to me because it was a lot of my own struggles. She had some of the same ones. Dudes, just go beach over there away from us. We women have real things to do while you guys are postulating and pretending you're masculine because you're watching monster trucks and you're all really just kins. Mark Driscoll is the same and different than Howerton at the same time. He once had a huge mega church, larger than Howerton's, named Mars Hill, that he proceeded to run straight into the ground like a drunken teenager behind the wheel of Daddy's Cadillac Escalade. I spoke on Tuesday about Mr. Penis Holmes' misdeeds, but I neglected to mention the irresponsible hatred of the LGBTQ community that was on the very beginning of his ranty clip. I hadn't seen that until I was doing more research on this after I'd watched that awful commercial for Stronger Men 2025. Okay. And his unreasonable hatred of that community is right up there with this talk of the pile of bodies behind the Mars Hill bus, behind the building. He said he was going to turn that pile into a mountain back when he was undergoing his difficulties that he had with Mars Hill that ended up crash landing. Who says that? Who threatens people? Who threatens people with the loss of their lives? I tell you who. Weak, whiny men. Men not really image holders of God. That's who says all this stuff. So I want to pull up and go over that article just a hair with you, just a little bit. I'm not going to read it in its entirety because there were some important things that I pulled out of it that I was just jaw dropped to read. Okay. Driscoll has a book coming out very shortly about the Jezebel spirit. And his original rant that got him kicked off the stage at the Stronger Men's Conference was against a male adult entertainment dancer who swallowed a sword and swung on a pole. He claimed that was the Jezebel spirit to seduce the men, and that it was an Asherah pole. This sounds to me like it's almost like it's manufactured outrage to try and not drag, trying to drive sales of his newest book. I just can't get over these guys. They're all Kens doing the beach off. They're all ridiculous. Okay. Crowning dishonorable men as kings. Absolutely. That's what's going on here. But here's the thing. There's no There's very few righteous men still out there. This is utterly ridiculous. Some of the things that have been said. Here's another quote by Mark Driscoll. He was talking about that pile of bodies, that mountain of bodies. He said, "You either get on the bus or you get run over by the bus. Those are the two options." It's not something that needs to be said when somebody's church is falling apart. You need to sit and listen and talk to the people leaving and ask them why it's happening. Take some correction. Take some other people's opinions. Don't just go off the deep end of stupid with this. And it looks like it may be happening for Howerton too, because of he is really in the spotlight right now with all the plagiarism claims. And they talk about an attendee from the previous year's conference salivates over pyro and explosions and guys coming down ropes, man, and the bikes. The appearance of masculinity, not true masculinity. Oh. And they've had politicians there, which shouldn't ever happen, as far as I'm concerned. Tanks running over cars. But here I get to the part I talk about God being a strong king. Well, God is a strong king, and God is not limited to just beaching off these ridiculous masculinity ideas that really have nothing to do with true masculinity. So, the article also points out the kids are all copying each other. There's nothing original among them. They're all fighting each other. It says as all of the explosions, punching, chair smashing, tank riding, and sword swallowing are happening, one cannot help but be reminded of Ken's experience with patriarchy in last year's Barbie movie. Oh, exactly. Why didn't Barbie tell me about patriarchy? Ken asked, which to my understanding is where men on horses run everything. Not quite what it is, but these guys are stuck in some kind of silly kingdom land. And all of them have their Mojo Dojo Casa House, which are their churches. They're as utterly ridiculous as Ken putting horse pictures and workout equipment in Barbie's dream house. So there's so many different things that for me just totally click on this. And the fact that Howerton likes to copy other pastors. And if you don't believe me, Sheila Ray Gregory, she's demonstrated some of the plagiarisms of Howerton. And I consider her a solid source. I really adore Sheila. She's a good person. I am going down here. Plagiarism, plagiarism, plagiarism. We're talking plagiarism. And this chapter was called something interesting. The sacrialized patriarchy, patri- sacralized hierarchy of list authority. Task list authority is huge with these guys. They have a list, they check it off. Not Santa's list, they're not checking it twice. And the author listed these things, which I thought were all very excellent points. In Vani Bacham's Kingdom Land, this means daughters must serve their fathers for life until a man comes along to marry them. Not true. In John MacArthur's Kingdom Land, this means slavery is, quote, the perfect scenario. No, slavery is an evil. In John Piper's Kingdom Land, That means women must not compromise men's masculinity, even while giving them directions back to the freeway. It reminds me of one time I remember driving through the wilds of West Virginia and hearing a preacher preach on the fact that if what women's controlling of men was and how sinful it was. And one of the examples that he gave was if you use a GPS that has a woman's voice, you're sinning by taking directions from taking commands from a woman, being under a woman's authority, which I thought was one of the stupidest takes I've ever heard. And this was back when I was still going to my old church. That shows you how incredibly long ago it was. And the last one in Josh Howerton's Kingdom Land, this means telling women on their wedding night to quote, stand where he tells you to stand, wear what he tells you to wear, and do what he tells you to do, unquote. And the person who wrote the article said that when the Kens all got together in their Stronger Men's Conference in the Kingdom Land, there were no women again below them. So Driscoll had to improvise and punch down the LGBTQ community. There were two people who were actually at the conference that I guess that Driscoll identified as non-binary. Now, whether they actually are non-binary or not, I don't know. That's really up to them. I have no dog in that game. As I keep saying to people when they're ranting about these bathroom issues and this issue and that issue, and um, calling people by um, pronouns, what harm does it cause to address somebody by the pronoun they want? You're not agreeing with them. You're not rubber stamping whatever is going on with them. You're just politely addressing them and how they view themselves, making the other comfortable, not being judgmental, not being unjudgmental. You know what? And were these guys that were supposedly non-binary harming Mark Driscoll? No, not at all. They were not involved with Driscoll at all. But he chose to take it there. But like I said, I'm pretty sure this has more to do with the fact that Driscoll has a book coming out very shortly about this thing that he's ranting about, Jezebel spirit. Now, so many Christian ladies that I admire, that I consider friends, like Sheila, like Pastor Kim, so many, we've all been talking about this spirit of Jezebel thing, and how many times all of us have been called Jezebels. And it's downright comical, some of the things that get put on women and called Jezebel spirit. My old church would have called me a Jezebel right now just because of what I'm wearing. It's virtually sleeveless. Well, it's a swimsuit and a swimsuit cover up. I got sequins. It's in prideful colors. I'm wearing sparklies on my glasses. My hair is long and I'm old as hell. No, dude, these are just artistic choices for the day. That's it. It's nothing to do with being a Jezebel. So I was joking last night with Pastor Kim that I was exhausted from running around being a Jezebel, the same Jezebel they keep claiming. So here's the thing. While they're running around claiming that we're all Jezebels and making ideas, very bad ideas about masculinity and beaching each other off and being all kin-like and plastic and the same but not the same. As women, I think we need to step forward. As Christian women, we need to ignore these guys. Just ignore them. Don't enthrone them. Don't give them any space in your life, in your brain, in your head. When you encounter one in the wild, just do like you encounter anybody who may be from a culture you don't understand. Just go, oh, my dear, bless your heart, and just move on. We got more important things to do. And if we're ever going to rescue the simple faith of Jesus, it's not going to be with monster trucks. It's not going to be with plastic conformity. It's going to be by being real and staying true to what the message of Jesus is. Okay, I am done. I'll see you guys later. I hope I'm done with this. This is my Friday Taco Tuesday talk, and thank you for joining.